Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit. Oh my gosh. You are such an iconic coaster for Universal. Yet not only do you suffer from a lot of problems, you also sit in this weird gray area where you have people that despise you with a passion, and then there are those who love Rip Ride. How do you get such a divided fan base? This is the story of Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit. To understand the rocket, let's head an hour west to Busch Gardens, Tampa. If you watched my video on SeaWorld, you know that during the 1990s, they added 2 looping coasters to Busch Gardens, Tampa from Swiss manufacturer B&M. Yep, another story involving B&M, and you wonder why I'm making a full in-depth B&M video. These 2 coasters would be Kumba in 1993, the sit-down looper, and Montu in 1996, the invert. Why is this important? Because in 1999, Universal opened their second gate, Islands of Adventure. Like their main park, Universal Studios Florida, they would open with one-of-a-kind dark rides. But to prevent a Universal Studios Florida situation, they decided to add a couple reliable high-thrill roller coasters. And what better way to get a reliable roller coaster than to go to B&M? They specifically wanted both a sit-down looper and an invert. But given how both already existed in our West, Universal had to spice it up a bit. For the sit-down, they decided to make it a high-speed launch coaster. For the invert, they decided to make it a dueling coaster by having 2 separate coasters intertwined with each other. These 2 coasters, under the name Incredible Hulk and Dueling Dragons, would stand out from Montu and Kumba. Both coasters would be a smash success when Islands opened, and it was clear Universal had a winner on their hands. Flash forward to 2007, Universal needed a standout coaster for Universal Studios Japan. More specifically, they needed an airtime machine with onboard audio that stood out in the park. Given their working relations with B&M, combined with the fact they make airtime-filled hypercoasters, Universal would go back to B&M for this project. But given the land constraints of their Japan location, they went with a mini-scaled hypercoaster that sits at 144 feet. The ride would open in 2007 under the name Hollywood Dream the Ride. This ride became popular for its floater airtime and the songs you listen to while riding it. With the success of Hollywood Dream, Universal wanted a similar ride to go to their Florida location for the 2009 season. They needed a filler coaster to bring guests to Universal Studios Florida to disperse them from overcrowding the new Harry Potter land opening next door in 2010. However, B&M actually rejected this offer because they were overbooked with a flood of projects around that time, and the waiting list was around 5 years, far too long for Universal to wait. This waiting list makes sense, as B&M had a ton of coaster projects between 2007 and 2012, including a flying coaster 10 minutes down the road at SeaWorld Orlando. So with Universal's lack of patience, they had to go with a different manufacturer that always confused me. In 2004, German manufacturer Maurer X debuted an all-new coaster car called the X-Car. Prior to this, Maurer was really only known for their wild mices and spinning coasters. To stand out in an ever-changing coaster world, Maurer would attempt to enter the extreme market with their X-Car vehicles. These cars are notable for their smaller size and specially designed ergonomic lap bar designs. These cars are designed to allow for longer hang time or long periods of being upside down with the use of only a lap bar. And I already mentioned this in my Flashback video, but the smaller vehicles allow it to perform tighter elements. This would be shown with the X-Car's first coaster, Skywheel at Skyline Park. The train's signature feature would be featured here with an inverting chain lift that hangs riders upside down at the top, followed by a reverse barrel roll into a dive loop to ground level. This specific layout is known as a sky loop, but Maurer also features custom layouts. The first of these custom layouts would be GaleForce at Drayton Manor. This would feature traits seen on the sky loops but with more unique elements. Maurer sold 18 X-Car trains between 2004 and 2015. Given their varied layouts and dynamic trains combined with its cheap price, Universal went ahead and bought an X-Car. In early 2008, Universal filed permits for a new construction site with Maurer under the name Project Rumble. Later in March, Universal Studios Florida announced their biggest coaster yet, Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit. They didn't exactly reveal much of the layout. The only thing known was that they would have a 167-foot, 51-meter tall vertical lift hill. The other thing mentioned was a multimedia package that included LED lights, built-in video recorders, and the option for riders to play up to 30 songs on the ride. Universal was really pushing an emphasis on music for this ride. Now, I could tell you the songs you can play, but they recently changed out the songs and none of the new ones are really that memorable. Now, this coaster confuses me sometimes. The first is why Universal went with an X-Car, because the layout isn't designed for an X-Car. Rip Ride is really more known for the airtime, as there are no inversions on this ride. This really feels more in line with a hypercoaster, and I feel like there are better options for this. I have already discussed why B&M wasn't the one, but my money was on Intamin. Intamin is capable of making airtime-filled mini hypercoasters that can fit on any plot of land, or if they wanted a vertical lift, we'll get back to that later. They could have gone with one similar to Fahrenheit at Hershey Park. My guess is that the X-Car was a unique model that would draw in more guests, but more likely that it was cheaper. Given how they were blowing their budget for Harry Potter, they wanted to lower down the cost for this project. Although I wouldn't really call Rip Ride cheap, as this had a price tag of $42 million. Yes, you heard that right. You can get a Giga Coaster for less than that, but we'll address that later. The other thing that confuses me is the name. Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit. Like, why? They have no meaning and they don't make any sense. Anyway, back to the ride. Construction began in May with preliminary land clearing. The first track pieces were installed during the week of December 7th, 2008. Construction for Rip Ride was moving swiftly. To get guests more hyped, Universal launched a website that featured blogs and photos that chronicalizes the construction of the ride. It seemed like the construction was going very smoothly. Until April 2009. While Universal is trying to get Rip Ride to open by summer, they confirmed the ride would be delayed by a few months. They never confirmed what caused the delay, but we have a couple ideas. The first is that several near-miss elements were too small, so they had to widen some sections. But the main cause is widely speculated to be the chain lift on the vertical lift hill. See, Rip Ride started testing shortly before the delay, but had to abruptly stop when Universal took out one of the chain lifts. This is so that if the coaster gets stuck on the lift, the chain can safely bring back the train into the station. However, something must have happened for this to not work out, because they ripped out the second lift out for standard anti-rollbacks. So now if the ride gets stuck, they have to manually crank the train to the top and then send it down the drop, where a series of trims will slow the train to where it valleys at the bottom so that evac is much easier. Once the chains were all set, testing then resumed. But issues still continue with broken audio system and even valleying during testing. These delays, along with licensing costs from the artist to play on the ride due to copyright issues, is a contributing factor to why it cost $42 million. But the full details were finally revealed. The first is that guests can choose between 30 different songs from 5 different genres. These would be rock, country, rap and hip-hop, club and electronica, and pop and disco. These songs would then play on 2 different speakers in the rider's seat that would then sync with the layout of the coaster. Another would be the on-ride video that would record both the riders on the ride and the train off the ride. This video would be sent wirelessly to the ride photo area where you can purchase it. Next would be the lighting package on Rip Ride that would change rhythms throughout the night. Finally, to utilize the X-Car train's movability came 3 unique elements. The first was obviously the vertical lift, as few of these existed back in 2009, especially here in America. The next would be the non-inverting loop. You know those regular loops that go upside down? Well, imagine if that loop twists at the top and then again as you go down so that you never actually go upside down. That's essentially this non-inverting loop. The other is a treble clef. Named after a musical note, this element is shaped to look like the note symbol of the same name that's essentially a wonky banked helix. Next is a switchback hill. This is an airtime hill that's shaped like a corkscrew. And then finally a wave turn and an incline helix. And given this is Universal, the coaster was designed to have a theoretical hourly capacity of 1,850 riders per hour. Finally, after a few months of delays, Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit opened on August 10th, 2019. While Rip Ride did finally open, it would still continue to have issues in its early years. These issues would be that the ride would still constantly close due to technical issues and even valleying during testing. These problems caused the coaster to open late at 11 a.m. on the daily. Due to the shortened testing periods caused by all the delays, this causes Rip Ride's testing cycle to run over. And it didn't help that the line would average around 2.5 hours. One of the reasons for its long line is its awful capacity. See, even though Universal claims to carry 1,850 riders per hour, the actual trains don't hold that many people. Each train consists of 2 6-rider cars for a total of 12 riders per train. Yeah, that's awful capacity at most parks, let alone at a Universal Park. Trains that are this small usually causes the line to move at the pace of a snail. Going back to Fahrenheit at Hershey, that coaster runs 3 12-passenger trains and that line absolutely crawls. To compensate, Universal implemented 2 things. The first is a moving loading station. This is so that the riders and the trains move at a fast pace to keep up with the long lines. The other is by running 7 trains. By having 7 trains run at once, you can have more people ride it per hour. The problem with that is that in order to run that many trains, you need a large number of block zones to prevent a collision. Hence why there are 4 sections of mid-course brake runs during the ride. But Universal quickly resolved the issues by summer 2010. But then the coaster closed in September 2010 due to a part recall. Maurer issued an alert warning about their X-Car coasters that found that the coupling bars holding the trains together were not fatigue endurable. This would be resolved with the ride reopening with refurbished trains a month later. Then Rip Ride would get stuck at the top of the lift a few times due to a computer glitch. But this is not important because this means the ride is actually safe. Then in 2015, Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit received metal detectors following an incident on Dueling Dragons. So now guests must put all their belongings in a locker before entering the queue line. The most recent change was the coaster had its music changed out for 5 different songs, reducing the numbers from 30 to 5. So that is currently where we are today, but there's still one thing I still need to address: the roughness. Even though Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit is very iconic, many people claim it's a very bad roller coaster. While these haters praise the music, the problem for these haters is that the coaster has a nasty rattle. Even from day one, many complain it feels like a shopping cart rolling down a brick road, and the problem continues to worsen. My theory for why Rip Ride is so rough seems to be train related. See, the X-Cars in general have problems for having rattles on their roller coasters. Now take this part with a grain of salt, as this part is just speculation. My theory is that the trains are built cheaply and not to last. Let's be for real, does anyone here actually like the X-Car trains? They feel cheap, and due to how the lap bars are set up, it can get uncomfortable at times. Also, let's not forget that the track rattle could be as a result of construction problems. Given how the coaster was delayed months, it's not entirely out of the question. Even to this day, I keep hearing people hate this ride so much. And the other thing they hate is those brake runs. While they are a necessity, they sometimes cause the coaster to have pacing issues to run slow. And no matter what Universal does, Rip Ride is still considered a rough and bad ride. The weird thing is that there is also just as many people who like Rip Ride. These people overlook the roughness and focus on the music and powerful airtime moments. So for them, because Rip Ride's issues doesn't bother them, they can enjoy it more. Except for the theming, because the ride lacks any theming and looks like a Six Flags coaster. Now due to this polarizing reputation, what do I think of Rip Ride Rockit? I actually really like this coaster. For me, because I have a higher tolerance to roughness, I can overlook the rattle on Rip Ride. I really like the music and airtime on this ride. The best parts are easily the airtime moments. For further explanation, let's dive deep into the layout. You first start out with the signature vertical lift. Vertical lifts are already intimidating enough, but ones this tall is especially. Then there's the first drop. This first drop, especially in the back cars, offers strong flojector airtime, and this is where you get your 65 miles per hour, 105 kilometers per hour speed. But I still question why the drop is not 90 degrees like the lift hill. Most other roller coasters reverse this. Unfortunately, those rattles occur during the valleys where they are the most forceful. After this is the non-inverting loop. While this is the first, it's still considered one of the best for combining airtime with laterals. Then you hit one of 4 mid-course brake runs. While most people see this as a buzzkill, I see it differently. For me, each block brake offers airtime going in and out of it. So in one way, a negative turns into a positive. Then a surprisingly large drop into a helix that warps into an overbank into another block brake. For me, this is the most forceful part of the ride, as it punches you with strong positive G-forces. Then you hit a twisted speed hill and a sort of wave turn element. The twisted speed hill has a combo of laterals and airtime, while the wave turn offers weird lateral hang time that dangles you from the side. Cruise through another block brake into a few S-curves into a somewhat forceful inclined helix into the final block brake. Now you have to be careful with this brake, because I've witnessed a few times where the ride block checks, causing you to stop at those brakes, killing the pacing. But this one doesn't exactly matter anyways, because you end with a couple more S-curves and hop into the final brakes, completing 3,800 feet 1,200 meters of track. And what blinds the roughness for me is the fact you're rocking out with the soundtrack playing on the ride. Now the trains are a big help to why I enjoy the coaster. Now I know some people don't like the lap bars because they rest on your stomach, so they can get really uncomfortable if you're stapled. Even though the lap bars are weird and bulky, because it's not over the shoulder, they don't cause me any pain, so I'm able to enjoy it without any discomfort. Now the one thing everyone agrees suck about Rip Ride is waiting in line. I mentioned you have to put all your crap in a locker, so you have to wait the entire time without your phone. And the queue line sucks because they don't have any theming and is essentially a big switchback room. And when you have to wait 30 plus minutes, that kinda sucks. That's literally the extended queue for any other ride at this resort. Now even though me and park locals like this ride, plenty of nerds on the internet wish for this ride to be torn down. Now what are the ways to improve the ride? Now obviously for one, get better theming, cause that line sucks. But for me, the most significant way to improve the coaster is to give it a full retrack. This is the treatment they gave to Incredible Hulk so that coaster can live much longer. The problem with this is that I don't even think Maurer offers the X-Cars anymore. None have been built since 2015, and apart from the project listings, is not even mentioned on their website. And with the amount of issues Universal continues to face with Rip Ride, they may remove it by the end of this decade. I really hope Universal can find a way to permanently fix the Rocket, because to me, this is a great layout and an underrated coaster. But for now, we just have to bear Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit in its current condition. Thank you all so much for watching this video. This video is part of my series where we dive into roller coasters and other amusement rides history and dynamics. If you enjoyed this video, which if you watched to the end it means you did, you can help by giving a like. Also, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. It only takes 5 seconds to do, and that motivates me to make more awesome content just like this in the future. This is the Coaster Flood, riding out.